if 2w minus 20 equals 8w, then 6w equals what? Well, in order to find out what 6 times w is, you have to find what w is first. So what you do is you can take your finger and cover up the 2w. That tells you what you have to deal with first. So you have to get rid of a negative 20 first. You always move things over by doing the opposites. So the opposite of negative 20 is positive 20. So I'm going to add 20 to both sides. So I'm going to bring down the 2w. Opposites cancel. Equals 8w plus 20. Now we have to get the w's over. I don't want to move the 2w because that leaves me with nothing, and you don't want to ever do that to yourself. So I'm just going to subtract 8w from both sides. So I get negative 6w equals opposites cancel 20. And then divide both sides by negative 6. W equals, okay, a positive divided by a negative is a negative. Now normally I would go ahead and simplify this fraction, but I notice that they're asking me to do 6 times w, so that kind of actually helps me out. What you do is you take the 6 that they're wanting you to multiply by, and this will be a whole number times a fraction. So the whole number is going to go up top of what you already have. So w is negative 20 over 6. You're going to put this 6 up top. Now the reason I didn't simplify it previously is because the numerator and denominator cancel each other out if they're the same thing. So all you're left with is w equals negative 20. And that's the answer to that one. If y varies directly as x, this is a direct variation problem. So you write down the y. Anytime you see the word varies, you put equals k. So equals k. And then directly as x. Direct goes straight across. So this is going to be next to the k. It's not going to be in a fraction. And so that's the equation that you've developed that you're going to use. Now you start plugging things in. Y is 5. You rarely know k. That's usually the first step for you to do when you're solving direct variation. X is 2. So to get k by itself, we're going to divide both sides by 2. So 5 over 2 equals k because the top cancels with the bottom. Now what you do is you take the original equation that you wrote to begin with, and you keep reading and plug more stuff in. So what's the value of y? We don't know, but we do know that k is 5 over 2, and we do know from the previous example that whenever you're multiplying a fraction times a whole number, that whole number goes up top. So now I could do 16 times 5 divided by 2, but I can simplify 16 and 2 first. 16 divided by 2 is 8, and so 5 times 8 is 40. So that's the answer to that one. Find the equation of the line that passes through the origin. Okay, the origin is the point 0, 0 and contains the point 10 and 5. Well, there's a shorter way of doing what I'm about ready to show you, but I need to show you how to find the slope of 2 points in case they don't give you the origin, they give you a different point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 2 points and put them into an XY table. So 10 is next to 5. And then you figure out what the changes are. So from 0 to 5, you have to add 5. And I always circle that, and I'll tell you why in a moment. And then from 0 to 10, I'm adding 10. So your slope is the circled number on top, 5 over 10, which simplifies to 1/2 because you divide top and bottom by 5. So now the equation y equals mx plus b is the slope-intercept form. Now whenever you're asked to write an equation, y and x always stay in your answer. So y equals, you just found the slope, 1/2 x. Now you need to find the b. Well, the quickest way to find b is to take the point they gave you, and multiply the slope times the x value. So 1/2 times 10, half of 10 is 5, and then you figure out how to get to the y value. So 5 plus what equals 5? Well, that would be 0, but you don't want to put plus 0 at the end here because 0 is 0. So the final answer for this is y equals 1/2 x. Now, I would like to say that the quickest way to do that, because it's passing through the origin, you know that the y-intercept is already 0, so all you really had to do was y over x. Remember, these are alphabetical order. So all you had to do was y over x, which is 5 over 10, and simplify it, and you would have had your answer. Okay, a rectangular garden has 5x times 10 plants. If the garden has a width of x plus 2 plants, what is the length? Okay, so the quickest way to do this is to factor this original expression out. We can divide both of these numbers by 5. So you write down what you can divide it by, and then you start dividing. So we have a 5 and an x. You took a 5 out, so that's an x, and then a plus sign, and 10 divided by 5 is 2. Well, then you notice that that is the width. So the other thing would have to be the width, the length. So the length equals 5. And that's actually the answer to that one. Okay, the school that Stefan goes to is selling tickets to a choral performance. On the first day of ticket sales, the school sold 3 senior citizen tickets and 1 child ticket for a total of $38. So 3 senior, 1 child, total is 38. So we can write that as 3S plus 1C equals 38. The school took in $52 on the second day, so that was the total of $52, by selling 3 senior citizen tickets and 2 child tickets. Find the price of a senior citizen ticket and the price of a child ticket. Well, I noticed right away that the senior citizens are the same. So what I can do, if I take this equation and multiply it by -1, everything, so I'm going to get a -3s, a -1c equals a -38, and keep the second equation like it is. Don't change anything about it. If I do that, my S values cancel out because they're opposites. So then I only have one variable left. So 2 take away 1, that's just C, equals 52 take away 38 is 14. Okay, so what that means is I have 14, the child's ticket is $14. Now I take that back into this equation that I did not change and substitute it in. So leave 3s alone, plus 2 times 14 is 28 equals 52. I subtract 28 from both sides. So 3s, opposites cancel, equal 52 take away 28 is 14. Nope, 24, sorry about that. 24 divided by 3, and 24 divided by 3 is, I'm sorry, that's an S, not a C. is 8. So the senior ticket is $8. Find a quadratic equation whose solutions are -4 and 3. Okay, if the solutions are -4 and 3, we can make these into factors, but you've got to put the opposites in there. So instead of a -4, you put a +4, and instead of a +3, you put a -3. And then you just use the FOIL method or the distributive property to go ahead and factor that, to multiply it out. So x times x is x squared, and x times -3 is -3x. Then you distribute the 4. 4 times x is a +4x. I'm going to put that under my x's. And 4 times -3 is -12. So that gives me x squared, and then 4 take away 3 is just plus 1x minus 12. But they said they wanted an equation, so you just put y equals out front, and that's the answer to that one. Okay, find the y-intercept for y equals 6 times the quantity x minus 4 times the quantity x plus 1. Well, here's the key for this one. The y-intercept, for the y-intercept, the x value is 0. In other words, these x's, you can cross them out. So then you have 6 times -4 times 1, which is -24. So the y-intercept, like I said, is when x equals 0. So 0, -24 is your y-intercept, or sometimes they'll just say -24. Oh, let me check and make sure. Nope, there's another one. Okay, factor into the fourth minus 100. The into the fourth can be split up evenly. I'm going to make 2 sets of parentheses, and I'm going to put 2 n's. I'm just going to split them up, so I'm putting n squared with each one. And then for this negative, you have to do a positive times a negative equals a negative. And then you have to say what times what equals 100. In other words, what's the square root of 100? So that would be 10. And you have to, if you have any squares left, you have to see if they can be factored again. This is a positive. If you have a difference, a sum of 2 numbers, you can't factor those again. But there is such a thing as a difference of 2 squares, but the 10 would have to have been a perfect square root for you to be able to do that, a perfect square, and it's not. So we can't take this one any further than it already is. Okay, anytime in algebra that you are asked to get rid of parentheses, you are always doing that by multiplying. I'm going to distribute this squared to the 2. And when I distribute, I'm multiplying. So there's like a 1 there, so 1 times 2 is 2. For my x, 4 times 2 is 8. And for my y, 3 times 2 is 6. Now you have to figure out what 2 to the second power is. So that's the same as 2 times 2, because it's saying that you have 2 of the 2's. So 2 times 2 is 4, x to the 8th, y to the 6th. Please do not just take this 2 times the exponent. Don't say 2 times 2, because if you have 3 squared, that does not equal 6. You don't just multiply those together. It means 2 of the 3's. So that means you got 9 of those. So this is the answer to this one over here. Okay, solve. In order to solve these, you have to square both sides like this. So 6 times 6 is 36 equals a square and a square root. They're opposites, so they cancel each other out. So you just have a v minus 2 there. You take your finger and cover up the v. We have to get rid of the -2. The opposite of -2 is +2. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So 38 equals v, opposites cancel, and that's your answer. Okay, this next one, what I'm going to do is go ahead and cross multiply. But when you cross multiply the 7 times this, it's got to be times everything else opposite of it. So in other words, 7 times x is 7x, and 7 times 6 is a positive 42. Once you've multiplied that out, then you bring down your equal sign, and you go the other direction. So 10 times x is 10x. Now I have to get my x's together, but I don't want to move the 10x over because that leaves me with nothing, and you don't want to ever do that to yourself. So I'm going to subtract 7x from both sides. Opposites cancel. So I get 42 equals 10 minus 7 is 3x. Divide both sides by 3. So 42 divided by 3 is 14. Opposites cancel. So the final answer on that one is 14. A ball is thrown vertically upward. After t seconds, its height in feet is given by the function h of t equals negative 16t squared plus 32t plus 40. After how long will it reach its maximum height? Well, what you have to do here, maximum height is the y value of the vertex So what you want to do is you can go ahead and take these. There's different ways to approach this, but you can go ahead and whatever's in front of the squared term is a, whatever's in front of just the variable by itself is b, and the constant is c. So there is a formula for the x value of the vertex. The x value is negative b over 2a, and that means the opposite of b. So the opposite of positive 2 is negative 32 times 2 times negative 16. Okay, so I've got negative 32 divided by negative 32. Well, a negative divided by a negative, they cancel each other out. So it's positive. 32 divided by 32 is 1. So the x value of your vertex is 1. So what you want to do here is we're going to plug this in for all the t's. So negative 16 times 1 squared plus 32 times 1 plus 40. So order of operations says you've got to do the exponents first. So 1 times 1 is just 1. All of these stay the same. I'm just showing you how to do it in case it's not a 1, how you would have to handle it. So then you multiply it. Negative 16 times 1 is negative 16, plus 32 times 1 is 32, plus 40. So I usually do the positive numbers first, so leave the negative 16 alone. 32 and 40 is 72. And then you go ahead and figure out that what that is. So 72 take away 16 is 6. 56. So 56 seconds. I think it's seconds, yep. So in 56 seconds, it will reach its maximum height. The perimeter of a triangle, perimeter means add all the sides. So the perimeter of a triangle is 240 feet. The second side is twice as long as the first side. The third side is 40 feet more than the first side. Find the length of each side. Okay, so you've got 3 sides. The first side, the second side, and the third side. We don't know any of the sides. We'll call the first side x. Then the second one is twice as long as the first one, so that's going to be 2x. And then the third side is 40 feet more than the first side, so that's going to be x plus 40, because more than means adding. Okay, so if you look at these, let's just put the x's together. So I've got 1 here, 2 here, and 1 here. That's a total of 4 of them. So 4x plus 40. And we know that the total is 240 because that's what they told us. So if you take your finger and cover up the 4x, you have to get rid of a positive 40. So the opposite of positive 40 is negative 40. I'm not sure why this thing's not working all of a sudden. Okay. So 4x, opposites cancel, equals 200. Then you divide each side by 4. So x equals 50. Okay, so it wants to know the length of each side. So side 1 is x. That's 50. 50 feet. Side 2 is 2 times x, so 2 times 50 is 100. And side 3 is x plus 40, so 50 plus 40 is 90. And that one's finished. Okay, median. Oops, sorry about that. Let me try that again. Median means middle number. So if you have the numbers that are already listed, 7, 12, 21, 41, and 50, and you try to find the middle by crossing out the ends and working your way in, you have 21. But that's the median of these 5 numbers. You want the median of 6 numbers. So you have to say 21 plus something, because something's going to have to be next to that, equals, oops, and then you have to divide by 2, because anytime you have a median and you have 2 numbers in the middle, you have to divide by 2. You have to find the average of them. So that equals 26.5. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and multiply, cross multiply, but there's nothing over here to multiply by. So 21 plus x equals 2 times 26.5 is 53. And then you subtract 21 from both sides to find x. Opposites cancel, so x equals 32. So the missing value is 32. Okay, a jar contains 4 red marbles, 2 red marbles. So, and 2, this should have said blue, sorry about that. Okay, a jar contains 4 red marbles, 2 blue marbles, and 2 yellow marbles. Jessica randomly chooses 2 marbles, one at a time, without replacing the first marble. If the first marble is red, what is the probability that the second marble is yellow? So she wants a red one and a yellow one, and she's not going to do any replacing. That becomes important in a moment. But first of all, for probability, you always have to have a total, because that's going to be your denominator. So this adds up to 8. So for the red, there are 4 red marbles in the jar. 4 out of 8 of them are red. Now, the and is the only time in math that you don't use for addition. You actually, with probability, you use and, you use multiplication with and. So if she took a marble out, there were 8 originally, and she did not put it back, because it says without replacing it, then the second time she draws, there are 7 marbles in the jar. And then 2 of those are yellow. So now, you multiply. 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 7 is 56. Okay, you can divide both of these by 8. So 8 divided by 8 is 1. 56 divided by 8 is 7. So the probability that the second marble is yellow is 1 out of 7.